Hello, Ciri. Say hi to the camera. You wanna talk power rankings? You wanna talk power rankings? You wanna say hi to the camera? You wanna talk about power rankings? What's up, everybody? It's Reinforced back with another episode of Power Rankings following an incredible conclusion to the Summer Showdown tournaments in APAC and NA. And oh boy, do we have a lot to unpack from the weekend. So many upsets, a development of meta where we saw a lot more Genji that even turned into Mei on maps like King's Row, etc. It's been all over the place, and quite frankly, this has probably been my toughest power ranking yet, because there has been so many upsets, and there are so many good teams that had poor performances but deserve to be rated higher. So I want to preface this ranking by saying that some of you might disagree with me, and I understand that, but this has been very hard, but I've done my best to do it justice and to give credit to those teams that really deserve to be higher up. So I hope you can have some understanding for the fact that this has been a very tough power ranking, and this has not been my most definitive edition of power rankings yet so far, but this is where my head is sort of at moving forward, and it's very much based on the recent performances and the recent results that we have seen. So a lot of it is going to be based on the Summer Showdown playoffs, because when it comes down to it, the elimination matches, it's a tournament. That's where I think the importance really lies. So we can go back, a week or two, but that's about as much as my data range permits, in my opinion, in this meta, because we had no hero pools, losers picked maps, and a tournament setting. So bear with me. I know you might disagree with me, but I'm doing the best I can, and this is what I think I've come to. So bit of a disclaimer there, because it's very tough. Let me just tell you, it's very tough. But I got a ranking anyway, so let's present it, and I'll give my reasons why this is the case. So starting off things, we got the APAC region, because I think the APAC region is a bit more straightforward. Number 5, we have the London Spitfire, and this is a team that has been improving as of recent, and I think they deserve number 5 because of their improvements and because of their recent results. I like what this team has going on, so at number 5, it's London Spitfire. At number 4, it's the New York Excelsior. Bit of a surprise to some of you who expected New York to perhaps be in the top 3, but I've put New York Excelsior at number 4 because I think that they didn't have the most impressive team coordination in this latest meta. A lot of you will look to Huxel as a standout player on this team, and I agree with you. I expected a lot of things from Huxel, but overall, it didn't feel like New York had the best understanding of the meta, and therefore sometimes their teamwork fell flat, they didn't have the best combination of abilities, etc. So while I agree that New York is individually a really strong team, I wasn't too impressed by the teamwork they displayed in the Summer Showdown. So at number 3, we have the Seoul Dynasty, and they have been showing ups and downs, but I think that they had a solid performance in the Summer Showdown nonetheless. They relied a lot on Prophet's very aggressive Genji that I did appreciate to see, and then they also pulled out the Mei on maps where they weren't truly confident in playing their Genji, so that at least showed that they had some respect for their opponents. Then you have Fitz, who had a pretty good role on that hit scan character, he played Ashe, etc. So I do like what the Seoul Dynasty have going on. They fell to the Shanghai Dragons, and truth be told, the Shanghai Dragons are a really good opponent, so you can't be too unhappy losing 0-3 to that team. I did think that they put up a good performance, and I did think that Seoul Dynasty showed better coordination in this meta. So a lot of recency bias going into the Seoul Dynasty because they have been so shaky leading up to the Summer Showdown, but I still think that they displayed better strategic and tactical presence than the New York Excelsior, and therefore they are number 3. So at number 2, we have the Shanghai Dragons, and so many people are going to be upset by this because with Lip in the roster and with Lip playing, they have such a monstrous record. I think it's like 23 out of 24 maps they've won when they have that pristine lineup featuring Lip and Fearless, I'd like to believe. So a lot of you are going to claim that Shanghai Dragons are still number 1 when they are fielding that roster, but I think that's unfair to the Guangzhou Charge, because at the end of the day, Guangzhou Charge won, and it is the Shanghai Dragons to blame for not fielding perhaps their best roster and actually putting up their best performance, if that is the case. So just because Shanghai Dragons have this pocket card, we're like, yeah, if they played Lip, they could have won the tournament. Yeah, well, they didn't. And that's Shanghai Dragons' fault. And so therefore, I put the Shanghai Dragons at number 2 because they didn't win. And I think it would be disrespectful to the Guangzhou Charge and the performance they had this tournament. So at number 1, For the first time, I think, it is going to be the Guangzhou Charge that are number 1 in my power rankings. They won the tournament. They put on a very impressive display. Krong was sensational on the off-tank role. Happy's Widowmaker, Eileen's Genji. They had so many things going on for them in this tournament. And I think that they are well-deserved the number 1 slot in this power ranking. So congratulations to the Guangzhou Charge for being number 1 and winning the Summer Showdown. Congratulations, Guangzhou. As my dog is eating my blanket. Now, for the NA tournament, things get very complicated. So I'm going to run through most of the rankings pretty quickly to just give you where my head is at. Because if I just did a top 5, I know you would have a lot of questions. And as you see the final ranking, there is going to be still a lot of questions. But I'm going to try to do this ranking justice. And again, disclaimer, very much recency bias based on the performances in the Summer Showdown and the results that we really saw from it. You know, going back 2 or 3 weeks, teams like the Toronto Defiant, they looked really shaky, and they probably don't deserve to be where they are right now. But keeping Summer Showdown in mind and what they displayed with presence of mind in this meta and their teamwork, coordination, this is pretty much where they are based. So, let's start from the bottom. Los Angeles Gladiators, number 12. Well, actually, Boston Uprising are number 13. But let's not talk about them. Number 12, the Los Angeles Gladiators. I don't think they displayed good presence of mind at all in this meta. I think there are better teams in this meta than them. And they sort of displayed that despite the fact that they have tons of individual skill, they're just not the best team around anymore. There are better teams that have great upsets this tournament, and there are better teams that have great former results than the Los Angeles Gladiators. So I don't really feel like I don't have any good results to really justify the Gladiators being higher in this rankings. Are you going to discredit teams that have had great upsets in the Summer Showdown and say, well, you know, Gladiators on paper, they're better. They have space, they have a solid backline with Big Us and Chaz, they have Kevster, Birdring. All of these factors are really good. But where are their results? I think it would be disrespectful to put the Gladiators higher when they haven't really had the results to back them up. And so therefore, the Gladiators are number 12 in my rankings. At number 11, we have the Washington Justice, and it all comes down to Tuba. It really does, but it is a Genji-centric meta, and so therefore I think that Tuba's Genji deserves to put this team at number 11. Then you have great players like Janu and Stitch to back him up, so I think that the upset against the Gladiators, you know, keeping that in mind, I do think that the Washington Justice deserve to be at number 11. So, congratulations, you know, you climbed a little bit. Dog check. Playing with toys. Number 10, we have the Vancouver Titans, and this was a bit more tricky because I do think that the Vancouver Titans have improved pretty drastically. I think if you consider players like Shockwave, he's had good hit scan capabilities, but this is not the most optimal meta for the Vancouver Titans. They had Dalton playing the Tracer most of the time, and he could swap to the Genji, but it's not really his primary hero. So I think that this meta displayed that the Vancouver Titans, they are a solid team, but not really perfect for this meta. I think they would have liked to have a Genji player that could play Tracer as well, but instead they prioritized Dalton on the Tracer, and he could flex to Genji where he really had to and where he couldn't really play that Tracer. So solid performance from the Vancouver Titans. Again, not the most optimal meta. At number 9, we have the Los Angeles Valiant, and they deserve to be higher. But where was Dreamer? Where was Lastro? Some big question marks around surrounding the Los Angeles Valiant, and I don't have the answers, and neither does it seem that they are providing us with the answer. They benched 2 of their best players, and they didn't have a great performance in the Summer Showdown. In the past, yes, we've seen monstrous performances from KSP and from Shax, but they weren't really anywhere to be found this Summer Showdown tournament because we have developed towards a Genji meta. KSF came in occasionally, and yeah, he's a pretty decent Genji, but for the most part, I was pretty disappointed not to see Dreamer and Lastro in the lineup, and as a result, the entirety of the Valiant suffered, and I think that they don't deserve to be higher placed because of their former results. We moved on, it's a new dawn, it's a new meta, and with this Genji in mind, you have to be really good at shutting down opponent Genjis with whether it's great immortality fields, shield bashes, or accretions from your Sigmas. And I don't think Valiant really display that. So at number 9, it is going to be the Los Angeles Valiant. A bit disappointing. I do think they can get wins moving forward. Again, relying on the KSP and Shax to sort of punch through some of these lower tier teams or mid-table teams. But until we see that, a big drop for the Los Angeles Valiant. But that's just how it goes with recency bias and the new meta. So at number 9, Los Angeles Valiant. At number 8, the Dallas Fuel. And this is a team that went out early in the tournament, but I think that they looked pretty good. Keeping in mind Decay and Doha, those are the 2 superstars for this Dallas Fuel team. And if they had a different opponent earlier on in the tournament, I do think that they could have had quite a run. Now, we can't really base that on anything, just like the eye test we saw when they played against the Paris Eternal. Fact of the matter is, I think Paris Eternal have some of the best control maps in the entire league, and so that's going to be a tough game mode for the Dallas Fuel. So they lost that. I do not know what they were thinking on Watchpoint Gibraltar, subbing in Onigod, and they just didn't cap a single point there, so very disappointing. But apart from that, Dallas Fuel had some pretty good performances. I believe they played King's Row and they played Hanamura pretty close against the Paris Eternal, so that is very impressive. Display that they actually know what's going on in this meta, and certainly prove that the eye test is a lot better than perhaps the results show that this team really is. So I do think highly of the Dallas Fuel, but I need to see more from them before I rate them higher, because they do have a great Genji in Doha, and they have a great hit scan with Decay, but we need to see the results coming in. I could have put them at number 4, because honestly, they look that good. But I don't think you can really justify that with the results in mind. So perhaps figure out a bit what you're doing with your substitutions, and maybe put on a better control map, and we'll see the Dallas Fuel higher in the rankings. For number 7, we have the Florida Mayhem. And this is a team that I really wanted to rate higher, but again, they didn't really have the result we wanted to see from them. When I consider great teams in this meta, yes, you have to account for great Genji players, where the Florida Mayhem didn't really enjoy playing Genji. They had Yaki showing it last week against the Houston Outlaws, but then we didn't see as much of the Genji from Yaki this week against in the rematch against the Houston Outlaws. So a bit shaky there. But apart from that, you know, you gotta have great roles like Batiste, Florida Mayhem, they have that. Gangnam Jin. You gotta have great Brigade players. Chris, he can sort of fill that role as a decent Brigade player. You gotta have a great Sigma. Gargoyle, one of the best Sigmas in the game. So the Florida Mayhem, they have the players to be a really good team in this meta. But the fact of the matter is, they lost against the Houston Outlaws. Now, I don't think that is necessarily because the Houston Outlaws are better man-to-man. I actually think that's because the Houston Outlaws have a good coaching staff and they prepared for this matchup. I think that the Houston Outlaws have proved that some weeks they look really good because they are well prepared for the meta and they have a good understanding of what they have to do. So yes, the Florida Mayhem, they have great individual skill on this roster and I want to see them perform better, but I think they sort of fell flat because they didn't have as good of an understanding of how to play this meta with rotating immortality fields, accretions, gravitic fluxes, dragon blades, all that good stuff. So the Florida Mayhem could improve it drastically in weeks to come, but we gotta see the results moving forward. So at number 7, it is going to be the Florida Mayhem.
Oh, hello, Ciri. Say hi to the camera. You wanna talk power rankings? You wanna talk power rankings? That it? You wanna talk about the Houston Outlaws? We all wanna talk about the Houston Outlaws, don't we? Yeah.
At number 6, it's the Houston Outlaws. This godforsaken Houston Outlaws team was the one team that really ruined the rest of the power ranking. Because I don't think that the Houston Outlaws deserve to be this high, but still, based on their performance against the Florida Mayhem, they do deserve to be here. I don't think that they necessarily have the best individual skill on this team, and I don't necessarily think that this is the meta for them, but they beat the Florida Mayhem pretty confidently, and I do think that they displayed a good understanding of how to play this meta. They might not have the best individual skill, but the way they use their immortality fields, the way they play their DPS lineup, where Dante could play a lot of the Tracer, and then you would have someone like Linkser pop off on the Widowmaker or the Ashe. I do think that they really came alive because they studied hard and they coached this team well to a point where they looked pretty confident and very comfortable, and in a lot of senses they were ahead of their opponents in terms of understanding how to play this meta and how to rotate your abilities. So the eye test certainly showed that this Houston Outlaws team was good in this meta. Now, the big question for me moving forward is Houston Outlaws going to stay ahead of the pack? Or are they going to be this team that were good early on and then they suffer long term because other teams figure it out? Like, I could easily see teams, Florida Mayhem, Atlanta Reign, I could see these teams get a better grasp, better understanding of how this meta is played, and then just jump ahead and be better than the Houston Outlaws. But the results aren't necessarily there to justify that leap above the Houston Outlaws, and so therefore, at number 5, it is the Houston Outlaws. And they are a bit of, you know, they are the dark horse. They are the team that I don't necessarily want to place here, but I do think that they deserve to be here based on their performances and results in the Summer Showdown. So, there you have it, Outlaws fans. I hope you're happy. At number 5, the Atlanta Reign. This is a team that honestly could be number 9, they could be number 5, number 4 even, if you really give it a proper shot. Because when Erster gets rotated into this lineup, I think they're going to look a lot better. But they shied away from that this week, because I think they wanted to rely on Edison on the Tracer instead, and they don't really have a player that can play both the Genji and that Tracer. It would be Erster, but clearly they don't have enough confidence in him based on Edison's recent performances on the Tracer, where he's been the primary carry for this team. Babybay slots into this team well because he has a good Ashe and he has great mechanical skills. So you can sort of put Babybay on the Ashe, just leave him up to do things, whatever he wants to do, the Babybay style, right? And then you have Edison carry on that Tracer. And that's sort of the approach that the Atlanta Reign had, but ultimately they fell short to the Toronto Defiant and agilities on that Genji. So some question marks surrounding the Atlanta Reign, how they're going to move forward. Are they going to rotate in Erster? But we've asked this so many times. Besides that, I think they actually have a pretty solid support line, the Atlanta Reign. I think they've proved that they understand where their primary support players are and how they rotate them around, whether it's Masa, Kodak, Dogman, of course. So I think they have a better understanding of their support line and how it functions and how they make their substitutions based on that. But I also think that this is a good meta for the tank line of the Atlanta Reign. You have now Hawk playing that Sigma, which he is known for, and you also have Gator playing an Orisa that he's really comfortable on. So I think overall, this is a pretty good meta for the Atlanta Reign, and in hindsight, I think I'm more surprised positively than negatively of the Atlanta Reign in the Summer Showdown. So good things for them, and I honestly think that they could improve in this Genji meta. You know, Babybay had a pretty ominous tweet where he tweeted out that this might be his last tournament. Well, maybe you can now build a roster where Edison plays the Ashe, and maybe you have someone like Erster playing the Tracer and the Genji. I think Erster's Genji is probably better than his Tracer, but there are some things you could do with this Atlanta Reign roster to make them improve over time. But for now, I am more so impressed by the Atlanta Reign than I am disappointed by the Atlanta Reign. So, pretty solid position from them, and they could climb or they could fall. You know, that's what power rankings really are. Now, at number 4, it is going to be the Toronto Defiant. And this is a team that, again, based on their performance against the Philadelphia Fusion, didn't necessarily look that crisp. But they have a few things going for them. Nevix, decent Sigma. Agilities, really good Genji. It looked like he really knew what was going on. Logic's on the hit scan, and he did logic stuff. So this is a team that have the manpower to really slot into this meta perfectly. And I think that they displayed what happens is when you take a team that necessarily isn't shining in other metas where they have a few things to figure out. This is a team that have been struggling all season, but now this is a meta that really suits them, and all players look particularly comfortable. You have someone like Ciri as well popping off in the backline, and now you have a team that is looking really crisp. And the fact of the matter is, this is a team that surprised a lot of people, and this is a team that beat the Atlanta Reign in a 5-map series. So the results are certainly there, and then you have to acknowledge Agility's Genji and really wonder how far can Agility's Genji really carry this team. So a lot of people are going to disagree with putting the Toronto Defiant at number 4, but based on the manpower alone and their understanding of the meta and how they're really playing it, I do think that they have the advantage over some of these Ashe and Tracer teams. Some of the teams that rely on Ashe and Tracer, like the Houston Outlaws, like the Atlanta Reign, like the Florida Mayhem, in many senses, I think the Toronto Defiant are ahead of those teams because they can play Genji and because of Agility's good hero pool in that regard. So Agility's also showed a pretty good May, and with that in mind, I do think that you have to put the Toronto Defiant above some of those Tracer and Ashe teams because they showed prowess in the best composition possible in the Summer Showdown. So that's why the Toronto Defiant are at number 4. Now, the top 3 is actually quite solid, and there's not a lot to discuss really. The San Francisco Shock are the number 3 team, and why is that? Well, because they really couldn't play the Genji to the most of their capabilities. This was the best Ashe / Widowmaker Tracer team with Striker really as the tip of the spear in the Summer Showdown. But that just wasn't enough to carry this team across the finishing line. Is it recency bias? Yes, it is recency bias. But I think it's unfair to teams like the Philadelphia Fusion and the Paris Eternal to sort of disrespect their performance in the Summer Showdown and this new meta that has developed by putting San Francisco Shock above them. My camera is shaking because Bad Dog shook the camera. I'm trying to provide analysis here, okay? We're trying to be real. Shock fans are mad at me and you're shaking the camera. We can't have this. I gotta explain. But yes, San Francisco Shock arguably has been the best team in the league, as well as Shanghai Dragons. Has been the best team in the league across the entirety of the season. But this past weekend, I don't think they were. And I think the Paris Eternal and the Philadelphia Fusion are above them. So at number 2, the Philadelphia Fusion. They couldn't be number 1, could they? But this is a team that adjusted very well for the Summer Showdown. EQO on the Genji looked insane. Carpe looked very crisp on the hit scan. Fury had some of the best shutdowns onto Sparkle that I think I've ever seen. The accretions were out of this world. What I liked the most about the Philadelphia Fusion was the fact that they had a unique take on this Genji playstyle. They know that EQO wasn't the most aggressive Genji in the league. So what did they do? They rely on Carpe instead to get great dynamites, get the damage on top of the enemy team like the Paris Eternal, and then have EQO be the one that comes in towards the end of the team fight, capitalizes and get the dash resets and then pulls out the Dragon Blade. If you go back and watch this series against the Paris Eternal and count how many times Sparkle pulled out his Dragon Blade first, and I think you'll see a very big difference where Sparkle was the one engaging most of the time and EQO was the one cleaning up most of the time. So I really loved seeing those very distinctive playstyles come to fruition when, in fact, both the Paris Eternal and the Philadelphia Fusion had very similar compositions. So with that based in mind, I am very impressed by the Philadelphia Fusion and how they brought a composition to this tournament, but brought their own flavor where they prefer to be the team that engaged towards the end of the fight and they like to play the slower style.
Oh, hello, Ciri. You want to say hi to the camera? Do you want to talk about power rankings? You want to talk about the Paris Eternal?
But at number 1, it is going to be the Paris Eternal for the aggression that Sparkle brought on this Genji and for what the entire team brought. Like, this was a team effort, right? You cannot just look at Sparkle's Genji and the pop-off moments he had. This was a true team effort from every man on this squad. Fielder had some amazing moments. Hanbid had some amazing moments. The glow up from Ben Best. This team has just really come alive in this meta. And a lot of it has to do with Sparkle's Genji and what he was able to provide aggressively. And the Dragon Blades he had, the dash resets, like the mechanical prowess of his Genji was sensational. And so therefore the Paris Eternal are number 1 for winning the Summer Showdown tournament. Now, no time for questions. Editor's gonna be mad. 23 minutes of footage of analysis of what this power ranking is based on. I am tired, but I did my best, and I hope you appreciate my power rankings because this was by far the hardest power ranking I've ever put together, and I tried to explain why. But oh well, if you're unhappy with them, so be it. Maybe next week they'll be better. Joke's on you, there's no power rankings next week. Or maybe there is. We'll see what happens. There's no games anyway. Thank you so much for watching this analytical video on my power rankings and how they came to be. I hope you really appreciated the video. Please leave a like on the video. It doesn't take much, but it does a world of difference. Leave a comment down below if you disagree with me or disagree with my opinions, my context. Who knows? Maybe I got something wrong. We're not perfect, you know? We all have our mistakes, but I try to do these power rankings justice. Thank you again. Thank you so much for watching. I am becoming delirious. I'm going to have some more coffee, and I'll see you next time on Reinforce's Overwatch League Power Rankings. And there we go. Woo!